Nick here. Today I'm going to be talking about firewalls and their policies. So firewalls introduction. What is a firewall? So think of a security guard at like a nightclub who decides who can come in and go from the club. They have the power to decide who comes in and who does not based on their knowledge that they've known. Why are firewalls important? I found a great article by dado.com with a quote that says this: a firewall is a security device that protects your network from unauthorized access to private data. Firewalls also secure computers from malicious software, creating a barrier between secured internal networks and untrusted outside networks. How do firewalls work? So they work by allowing traffic into a network that has permission. So think of it like you're either granted permission or you're not to access the network. How big can firewalls be? Firewalls can be large in size based off of the needs of the administrator determined. So the administrator of the network can determine the size of the firewall based on the needs of the organization. Next, we have what is a firewall rule and policy. So what is a firewall policy? Think of it like a set of standards defined for a task. So let's say you want to defend a network against rogue attacks. You would have a policy or a set of rules towards achieving that goal. So here we'll look at the firewall rule in deeper detail of those standards. For example, let's say you have a rule that's just blocking connections on port 80. You would have a collection of those rules to in return make a policy. I found this amazing article by sunvalley.io, and I found a very helpful quote by them that states, firewall rules determine which type of traffic your firewall accepts and which are denied. A collection of the firewall rules will make up the firewall access policy. So again, that just goes back to what we're talking about. The set of rules will make up the policy, and the rules are set to do different things. For example, as we talked above, block connections, so it can determine who can go the outbound traffic and the incoming traffic, and it can filter that accordingly. It is also very important to ensure your rules are correctly in place to help ensure absolute protection for your network. Incorrectly written rules and policies can lead to potential network attacks and vulnerabilities. We're going to talk about actually creating the rules and the policies for said firewall. So when creating a firewall policy, there are certain areas of importance. Making sure that they create it correctly is vital to ensure absolute safety. So let's just talk about that for a second, what that exactly means. So let's say you have some rules set that were maybe incorrectly written or just not created based on what the organization needs. You could be, potential to attacks. Somebody could know that and try to exploit that. Or you may not be defending areas of your network that you need to be defending as well, or blocking traffic from the inside that you need to be blocking. So again, that's super vital. Next, we're going to talk about some best practices when creating rules. So I found an article by deepsecurity.com that has a good list of kind of like air quotes best practices to perform when creating these policies. So I'm just going to list a few of these rules here. So the first one I have is create the rule. So the first step you want to do is create the rule. Write it, according based on what you need. Number 2 will be set the protocol of the rule, as we just talked about. So, writing, ensuring what it's going to do correctly. Next, we have ensure the rule is set to the corrected traffic inbound or outbound. So here we go. That comes back to what we were talking about originally. Got to make sure the rule is set exactly for what you need for your organization. So if you need to do one thing, let's say on port 80 again, just for the example that we use, then it needs to do that correctly, because incorrectly could potentially hurt your organization. And next we have create scheduled maintenance. This is something I don't think enough companies do, and that's just create maintenance for them. So you want to make sure you're going in there regularly and checking up on them, following up on the rules, ensuring they're working as intended and you didn't make any mistakes, because if you did make any mistakes, then you can fix them and learn from them and move on. Next, we're going to talk about common mistakes made when creating policies and rules for this firewall. So When creating and using firewall policies and rules, mistakes are going to be made. Taking these mistakes and learning from them is vital to strengthen your security on your network over a period of time. Embracing these mistakes and learning from them or correcting errors will be nothing less of a good thing. So that just comes back to what we were talking about a second ago. You just need to maintain these rules and watch over them and see if there's any errors based on traffic incoming or outgoing, and adjust accordingly, and you'll learn from those mistakes. So I found a wonderful article again by darkreading.com this time with some common mistakes that are made. So let's see. So a mistake often that companies make is they have too broad of policy configuration. So basically it's too broad. It's not dialed in enough to do exactly what the purpose of the rules were made for. So you want to make sure you kind of reel that in and direct it towards what you're lacking in or what you really need to watch out for in terms of potential harm against the organization or an attack. Having too broad could let some, malware slip through the cracks or something. So, and the next one is you need to test your system. So you need to have administrators test these rules, maybe do like a little, company test and try to see what you can come up with, see if you can exploit any of the rules to see what does and doesn't work that you can fix, based on that. And the last one is ensure proper event logging. So a lot of companies aren't doing this. You could have an event logger set for, let's say, once a week, and then it could log all the events. That way you could go through and read them and see if there's anywhere that needs, looking at, or anywhere that could be exploited that you can go in and fix. And from the research I've conducted, a lot of firewalls that are set up by these companies and organizations are highly lacking this, so that is very important when ensuring safety for yourself. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the future of firewall policies. So in today's ever-changing world, attempts against an organization are only going to get stronger and more creative. So obviously, as a result of this, if the attacks get stronger, the defensives get stronger. So as I wrote here, as the threats become stronger, then the defenses must as well. So that's just, with the times. Technology is only going to advance more and more. So you're going to have to be able to defend yourself better and better. So there's another wonderful article I found by getcyberresilient.com that discusses the future of firewalls and their security measures and where they see us heading towards. So a good point I'd like to touch on is firewalls are your first line of defense. So if that cracks, that's going to be bad news. So having outdated firewalls and policies and rules is just a bad thing in general. Now, an interesting point I found is the goal is to move towards rules that respond dynamically versus one solid rule, which is very interesting to think about. A rule that would be able to switch and determine based on the traffic incoming. And then an end goal here is to move towards policies and rules that are cloud, like a cloud-based firewall, to inspect traffic remotely for servers. Lastly, we have works-cited. If you'd like to check out some of these awesome links that I referenced today, here they are. And lastly, I'd like to thank you for the time to listen to me speak and talk about these firewalls.